Leonora Tanner stood in her barn at 3:00 in the morning, staring at the cut padlock lying on the ground. The thieves had been seconds away from opening the door, when Biscuit's alarm had scared them off. Her hands shook as she looked at her 2-quarter horses, safe in their stalls, then at the little pony standing behind her, munching hay with absolutely no concern for the crisis he'd just prevented. What the thieves didn't know was that they'd encountered the one animal who would ultimately bring about their downfall. And he was standing right there, acting like he'd done nothing remarkable at all. 6 months earlier, Leonora had inherited her uncle's homestead in the remote hills of eastern Oregon. The property sat at the end of a 12-mile dirt road, surrounded by pine forests and accessible only by crossing 2 seasonal creeks that could wash out for weeks during spring melt. It was isolated, beautiful, and exactly what she needed after losing her teaching job and her apartment in the same devastating month. Her Uncle Wendell had been a bachelor his entire life, pouring all his energy into the land. When the lawyer read his will, Leonora discovered she'd inherited 160 acres, a weathered farmhouse, a decent barn, 3 aging cattle, and one very small, very round pony named Biscuit. The cattle. She understood the pony was another matter entirely. Biscuit stood barely 13 hands high, with a coat the color of sun-bleached sand, and a black mane that stuck up in perpetual disarray no matter how much she brushed it. He had one blue eye and one brown eye, a Roman nose, and the general appearance of a creature assembled from spare parts. When she'd first met him, he was standing in the middle of the driveway, refusing to move, eating dandelions. That pony's worthless. Her uncle's neighbor, Virgil Crane, had told her on moving day. Virgil ran cattle on the adjacent property, and had known Wendell for 40 years. Your uncle won it in a poker game, back in '98. Fella said it was a Norwegian fjord, purebred, papers, and everything. Turned out to be a great pony someone had clipped to look the part. Thing can't be ridden. Can't pull a cart. Can't hurt cattle. Wendell kept him out of stubbornness. I think you'd be better off selling him for meat money. Leonora had looked at Biscuit, who looked back at her with those mismatched eyes, utterly unconcerned by the discussion of his fate. Something in that gaze made her decide to keep him. Usefulness be damned. That decision would save everything she owned. The first few months at the homestead were harder than Leonora had imagined. The house needed constant repairs. The well pump failed twice. The roof leaked in 7 places during the first rain. She spent her savings on materials, learned to fix what she could from YouTube videos, and accepted help from Virgil when things were truly beyond her skill. She used what little money remained to buy 2 solid quarter horses from a dispersal sale. The first was a bay mare named Delilah, 15 years old, steady and reliable. The second was a younger geeling called Copper, barely 4 years old, but green broke and willing. Together they cost her $3,000, which was everything she had left after the essential homestead repairs. With those 2 horses, she planned to start a small trail riding business. The property bordered national forest land, and tourists came through the area every summer, looking for guided rides through the wilderness. It wasn't much, but it was a plan, a way to make the homestead sustainable. Biscuit, meanwhile, continued to be spectacularly useless. She'd tried to ride him exactly once. He planted his hooves and refused to take a single step, then unceremoniously bucked her off into a pile of composted hay. She'd tried to use him to drag fallen branches from the pasture. He'd walked backward instead of forward, tangling himself in the traces until she had to cut him free. She'd attempted to train him, to lead the other horses to pasture. He'd led them directly to the garden and supervised while they ate her entire crop of young lettuce. I swear that pony is actively malicious. She'd complained to Virgil one afternoon while they fixed the fence line between their properties. Virgil had laughed, his weathered face creasing into 1,000 lines. Wendell used to say Biscuit was smarter than both of them put together. Said the pony just had his own priorities. His priority seems to be causing chaos and eating everything in sight. Maybe so, but your uncle never got rid of him. And Wendell wasn't a sentimental man. Leonora had filed that comment away, though she couldn't imagine what her practical, non-nonsense uncle had seen in the troublesome pony. The trouble started in late August. Leonora woke one morning to find Virgil's truck parked in her driveway at dawn. He was leaning against it, looking older than his 73 years. "They hit the Granger place last night," he said without preamble. "Took 4 horses, including Wade Grurz's best roping horse, cut the locks, loaded them in a stock trailer gone before sunrise." Wade Grurz's ranch was 30 mi north, farther into the mountain country. "Professional operation," Virgil explained. "These weren't kids joy-riding, or meth heads looking for quick cash. This was organized, careful, and they knew their horses. They took only the valuable ones and left no evidence behind. Sheriff says we should lock up tight and keep our eyes open," Virgil continued. "But between you and me, there ain't enough deputies to patrol all these back roads. We're on our own out here." Leonora thought about Delilah and Copper safely in the barn. "I'll get better locks. Maybe set up some lights." Good idea, though. Being this far off the main road might work in your favor. These thieves seemed to hit places with easier access. She installed motion sensor lights that week and bought the heaviest padlock the hardware store sold. At night, she started sleeping with her bedroom window open, listening for unusual sounds from the barn. Biscuit naturally seemed utterly unconcerned by the threat. He spent his days eating grass, chasing the chickens for entertainment, and standing in the middle of the driveway whenever she needed to go somewhere, forcing her to get out of her truck and move him manually. Over the next 6 weeks, 3 more ranches were hit. The thieves were working a pattern through the county, always at night, always professional. They seemed to know exactly which horses were worth taking, and which to leave behind. The sheriff's department held community meetings, shared descriptions of suspicious vehicles, and advised everyone to install cameras and alarms. Leonora did install a camera, a cheap wireless model, pointed at the barn entrance. She also started keeping her phone next to her bed with the sheriff's number on speed dial. But it was Biscuit who gave her the first real warning that something was wrong. It happened on a Thursday night in late September. Leonora woke to a strange sound, a continuous rhythmic banging that seemed to be coming from the barn. She grabbed her phone and flashlight, pulled on boots, and ran outside. The barn door was closed and locked, but the banging continued. When she got closer, she realized it was Biscuit systematically kicking the wall of his stall. Not frantically, not in pain, just methodical, deliberate strikes against the wood. Biscuit, what in the world? She unlocked the barn and slid the door open. Delilah and Copper were alert, but calm in their stalls. Biscuit stopped kicking the moment he saw her, walked to the front of his stall, and stared at her with those mismatched eyes. Something made her walk through the barn, checking every corner with her flashlight. Everything seemed normal. The tack room was undisturbed. The feed bins were closed. The back door was still locked from the inside. But when she walked around the outside of the barn, she found fresh tire tracks in the soft dirt near the tree. Someone had driven partway up the access road, close enough to see the barn, then turned around and left. She called the sheriff's department that night. A deputy came out the next morning, took photos of the tracks, and filed a report. But there wasn't much they could do with tire impressions that matched half the trucks in the county. "You say the pony made the noise that woke you?" the deputy asked, looking skeptically at Biscuit, who was engaged in a battle of wheels with a fence post, apparently trying to eat it. He was kicking the wall rhythmically. It wasn't normal behavior. The deputy wrote it down, but didn't look convinced. "Well, keep your doors locked and call if you see anything suspicious." After he left, Leonora stood in the barn with Biscuit. "Did you know someone was out there?" she asked him. Biscuit turned away and went back to his hay, offering no answers. 3 nights later, it happened again. This time, Leonora woke to find Biscuit not kicking the wall, but screaming. Horse screams are terrible sounds, shrill and piercing and full of fury. She'd heard horses scream before, usually when they were fighting or badly frightened. But this was different. This was deliberate, sustained, and furious. She grabbed her phone and ran to the barn, not bothering with Boots this time. The motion sensor lights blazed to life as she crossed the yard. Through the barn window, she could see Biscuit rearing in his stall, striking the door with his front hooves, screaming continuously. Delilah and Copper were panicking in their stalls, feeding off Biscuit's energy. The whole barn was in chaos. Leonora threw open the barn door and immediately understood why. The padlock had been cut. It was hanging by one arm, the metal sheared clean through. The barn door itself was still closed, but whoever had cut the lock had been seconds away from opening it when Biscuit began his alarm. She spun around, scanning the darkness beyond the lights, but saw nothing. No movement, no vehicles, no shadows, just the dark tree and the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She called 911 while backing into the barn, pulling the door closed behind her, stayed on the line with the dispatcher while she calmed the horses, while she waited for the deputy to arrive, while she tried to control her shaking hands. It took the sheriff himself 45 minutes to reach her property. By then, whoever had cut the lock was long gone. Sheriff Boyd Hartley was in his 60s, a lean man with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness. He examined the cut lock, walked the perimeter with his flashlight, and asked detailed questions about timing. "You're lucky," he finally said. "Another minute and they'd have been inside. Once they get the horses loaded, we never get them back." "It was the pony," Leonora said. He raised the alarm. He knew they were here. Sheriff Hartley looked at Biscuit, who had calmed down and was now peacefully eating hay as if nothing had happened. "The little paint one. He's not technically a paint. I'm not sure what he is, but he's done this before. 3 nights ago, someone drove up here to scout the place, and he woke me up then too." The sheriff made notes. "Some horses have strong protective instincts. Could be he's territorial. Could be he just doesn't like strangers." He paused. "You said you have a camera." The camera had been useless. The angle only caught the barn entrance, and whoever had approached had come from the side, staying just outside the frame. All her cheap camera had recorded was Biscuit's shadow moving frantically in his stall, and the blur of Leonora running across the yard. "I'll send a patrol by when we can," Sheriff Hartley said. "But with one deputy covering 300 square miles, I can't promise regular checks. You're doing the right things. Good locks, lights, staying alert. And that pony of yours might be worth his weight in gold if he keeps warning you." After the sheriff left, Leonora sat on a hay bale in the barn until sunrise, watching the horses. Delilah and Copper had settled down quickly, dozing in their stalls, but Biscuit remained alert, positioned where he could see the barn door, ears forward, eyes focused on the darkness outside. "I'm sorry I called you useless," she told him quietly. Biscuit flicked one ear in her direction, but didn't look away from his vigil. Word spread fast in rural communities. By noon the next day, Virgil appeared with 3 other ranchers from the area. They spent the afternoon installing a proper alarm system on her barn, motion sensors on every entrance and additional cameras with night vision capability. "This is too much," Leonora protested as they worked. "I can't afford to pay you all back." "Nobody's asking you to pay," Virgil said gruffly. "These bastards hit any one of us. They're hitting all of us. We take care of our own out here." One of the other ranchers, an older woman named Ruth, who ran sheep on the property west of Virgil's land, set up the new cameras to feed to Leonora's phone. "You'll get alerts anytime something moves near the barn. Animals will set it off too, so expect notifications for raccoons and deer. But you'll know if someone's poking around." They also formed a phone tree. If anyone saw suspicious activity, they'd alert the others. 5 homesteads scattered across the hills, all watching out for each other. What about the horses? Ruth asked. Are you thinking of moving them somewhere safer until these thieves are caught? Leonora had considered it. But moving them where? Most of her neighbors had horses, too. Equally vulnerable. And boarding them in town would cost money she didn't have. I think we're safer with Biscuit on watch, she said, surprising herself with the confidence in her voice. Ruth looked at the pony who was attempting to steal tools from the open toolbox. That little fellow. What's he going to do? He's woken me up twice now when someone was here. I think he's territorial or protective or something. But he knows when something's wrong before I do. Virgil nodded slowly. Wendell always said that Pony had sense more than he let on. They finished the installation as the sun set. Leonora's phone now showed 4 different camera angles of her barn, all in clear detail, even in the darkness. The alarm system was connected to both her phone and a siren loud enough to wake the dead. If they come back, we'll know, Ruth said. And so will everyone within 5 miles. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. The thieves hit a ranch 40 mi east, taking 3 Arabians worth a combined $60,000. Then they hit another place to the south, taking a pregnant mare and her yearling colt. The pattern continued, but they didn't come back to Leonora's property. She started to relax to hope that maybe the alarm system and extra cameras had made her homestead too risky a target. She even managed to book her first 2 trail riding clients. City folks who wanted a gentle ride through the forest. Delilah and Copper performed perfectly, and she earned $200 for 4 hours of work. Biscuit, meanwhile, had developed a new habit. Every night around sunset, he would position himself at the front of his stall, facing the barn entrance, and stand there until dawn, not eating, not sleeping, just watching. Leonora started calling it his guard shift. You really think something's going to happen, don't you? She asked him one evening while distributing grain. Biscuit didn't acknowledge the question. His eyes remained fixed on the darkening world beyond the barn door. It happened on a moonless night in late October. Leonora was awakened not by Biscuit's alarm, but by her phone buzzing frantically with camera notifications. She grabbed it and saw 4 figures moving around her barn, clear as day in the night vision cameras. They were professionals. 2 went straight to work on the barn door, while 2 others moved to disable the alarm system. They wore dark clothing and moved with practice efficiency. Leonora's fingers shook as she dialed 911 first, then triggered the phone tree with a mass text. They're here. Inside the barn, Biscuit had already started his alarm. But this time, he wasn't just screaming and kicking. This time, something had changed. Through the camera feed, Leonora watched as Biscuit did something she'd never seen any horse do. He systematically began opening his stall door by working the latch with his teeth, something she hadn't even known he knew how to do. Then he moved to Delilah's stall and did the same. Then Copper's. What are you doing? Leonora whispered, watching her phone in horror. If the thieves got that barn door open and all 3 horses were loose inside, it would be chaos. But Biscuit wasn't finished. As the thieves worked on the barn door, Biscuit positioned himself directly in front of it. Delilah and Copper, now free of their stalls, crowded behind him, feeding off his tension. And then Biscuit did something extraordinary. He charged the barn door from the inside. The impact of a 13-hand pony hitting a barn door shouldn't have been dramatic. But Biscuit hit it at full speed, with Delilah and Copper thundering right behind him, and the door burst open with explosive force. The thieves weren't expecting that. Nobody would expect that. The door slammed into 2 of them, knocking them off balance. 3 horses erupted from the barn in a chaos of hooves and screaming. Biscuit went straight for the leader. the one who had been cutting the new lock. The man scrambled backward, tripped, went down. Delilah and Copper scattered into the yard, panicked and confused. But Biscuit stayed focused. He circled the fallen thief, teeth bared, striking the ground with his front hooves every time the man tried to stand. The other thieves were running now, abandoning their companion, heading for their truck parked in the trees. Leonora could hear engines starting, voices shouting, tires spinning in dirt. She grabbed her shotgun from the closet and ran outside. The motion sensor lights blazed. The alarm siren wailed, and in the middle of her yard, a tiny, supposedly useless pony was holding a horse thief at bay with the focused intensity of a trained guard dog. "Don't move!" Leonora shouted at the thief, leveling the shotgun in his general direction. She'd never fired it at a person, and prayed she wouldn't have to start now. The man stayed down, hands raised, eyes wide with fear. Not fear of Leonora or her gun, she realized, but fear of Biscuit, who stood over him like a small, furious demon. Sirens rose in the distance. The other thief's truck was gone, racing down the dirt road. But this one wasn't going anywhere. Not with Biscuit standing guard. Sheriff Hartley arrived with 2 deputies and 3 of Leonora's neighbors. They found her in the yard, still holding the shotgun, with Biscuit maintaining his vigil over the captured thief. The thief was named Clyde Vernon, and once in custody, he talked. He'd been part of a 3-man operation running stolen horses across state lines for nearly a year. They'd taken over 40 horses, sold them through a network of crooked dealers, made hundreds of thousands of dollars. They'd scouted Leonora's property twice, the sheriff explained to her the next day. Identified her 2-quarter horses as worth stealing. They'd planned to come back a 3rd time for the actual theft. What they didn't plan for was Biscuit, Sheriff Hartley said, shaking his head in amazement. Vernon says that pony scared him worse than any guard dog he's ever encountered. Says it came out of that barn like a missile. He opened the stall doors. Leonora said, "All 3 of them. I watched him do it on the camera. Then he charged the barn door from the inside to knock them down." The sheriff pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. "We found this in Vernon's truck. They'd been keeping surveillance photos of properties they planned to hit. The photo was of Leonora's barn taken from the tree. And there, visible in the window, was Biscuit's distinctive face, one blue eye and one brown, staring directly at the camera. Vernon says his partner wanted to skip your place entirely after they saw this photo. Said the pony looked wrong somehow. Evil, he called it. But Vernon thought he was being superstitious. The sheriff chuckled. Guess his partner was right. With Vernon's testimony, authorities arrested the other 2 members of the theft ring within 48 hours. They recovered 16 horses, though many others had already been sold and dispersed. The case made regional news. Several reporters came to interview Leonora about her guard pony. Biscuit, for his part, seemed utterly unchanged by his new fame. He went back to eating grass, harassing the chickens, and standing in the driveway whenever Leonora needed to leave. A week after the arrests, Virgil came by with an old box of papers. "Found these in my attic," he said. "Things Wenda left with me for safekeeping over the years. Thought you might want to look through them." Most of it was old ranch records and receipts. But at the bottom, Leonora found a faded journal, her uncle's handwriting barely legible on the yellowed pages. She made coffee and sat on the porch to read it. Most entries were mundane notes about weather and cattle prices. But there was a section from 1998 that made her hands still. "Won a pony in poker tonight from a man passing through. Claimed it was a Norwegian fjord purebred. Papers looked fake, so probably a grade pony someone clipped to look the part. Doesn't matter." The man also said something interesting. Said the pony came from a homestead up in the Wallowa Mountains. Old woman who bred them specifically to guard her livestock from predators and thieves. Said she crossed horses with instinct for protection, didn't care about breed, or looks only temperament. This pony apparently ran a pack of coyotes off her property when it was barely a yearling. Kept a chicken snake trapped in a feed bin until she could kill it. Alerted her to a barn fire before it spread. The man lost the pony to me in cards, but seemed relieved to be rid of it. Said it was too smart, too stubborn, too weirdo-looking. Made him nervous. I like it. Named it Biscuit on account of its color. Might be the ugliest pony I've ever seen, but I've got a feeling it's exactly what this place needs. Later entries mentioned Biscuit sporadically. The pony had chased off a bear that got into the cattle pen, had refused to let a traveling salesman onto the property until Wendell came out, and sure enough, the man had been running a scam. Had woken Wendell one night during a bad windstorm, making enough noise that Wendell got the cattle to shelter before a tree came down right where they'd been standing. Useless for riding or work, her uncle had written, but worth more than all my other horses combined for what he actually does. Biscuit isn't a working pony. He's a guardian, and he's damn good at his job. Leonora closed the journal and looked out at the pasture where Biscuit grazed peacefully. Not a working pony. A guardian. Her uncle had known, had understood what Biscuit was all along, and had kept him safe and fed for 26 years, because he recognized the pony's true value had nothing to do with riding or pulling carts. Winter came to the homestead. Snow covered the hills, and the dirt road became impassable for weeks at a time. Leonora settled into the rhythm of rural life, tending her animals, planning for the spring trail riding season, slowly building her new life. The horse theft ring's arrest made a difference in the community. Horses were still stolen. Crime never fully stopped. But the organized operation that had terrorized ranchers for over a year was finished. People could sleep a little easier. Leonora invested the money from her fall trail rides into better fencing and a real website for her business. Virgil helped her plan guided rides into the national forest. Ruth taught her about raising chickens for egg sales. The community that had come together to protect each other slowly became more than neighbors. They became friends, and Biscuit continued his nightly vigil, watching over the barn from sunset to sunrise. One evening in December, Leonora brought him an apple cut into slices, a rare treat. He accepted it gravely, his mismatched eyes studying her with that unsettling intelligence. "I understand now," she told him. "You're not useless at all. You never were. Uncle Wendell knew exactly what you were worth." Biscuit finished his apple, then returned to his position at the front of the stall, eyes on the barn door, ears forward, alert. "Thank you," Leonora said quietly. "For protecting us. For protecting me." If Biscuit understood, he gave no sign. He simply stood his watch, as he had for 26 years, as he would continue to do for as long as he was able. The guardian of the homestead, dressed in the unimpressive body of a small, ugly pony with mismatched eyes and a stubborn streak a mile wide. Exactly what the property needed. Exactly where he belonged. Spring came, and with it Leonora's first full season of trail riding clients. The business grew slowly but steadily. She bought 2 more horses, both rescues, both gentle enough for beginners. Delilah and Copper became her reliable foundation, leading tourists through the mountain wilderness, and Biscuit became something of a local legend. People came to see the guard pony who'd captured a horse thief. A regional magazine did a feature story. Someone made a social media page dedicated to photos of Biscuit looking stern and judgmental, which somehow got thousands of followers. But fame didn't change him. He remained utterly uninterested in attention, completely focused on his job. Every night, the same vigil. Every morning, the same scrutiny of anyone who approached the property. Virgil stopped by one afternoon with news. W. de Granger got his roping horse back, he said. One of the 16 they recovered Says he owes it to your pony raising the alarm. Biscuit was just doing what he was bred for, Leonora said, watching the pony graze in the pasture. Maybe so, but not many animals would do what he did. That took courage. That evening, as sunset painted the mountains golden pink, Leonora stood in the barn while Biscuit took up his nightly position. The little pony who'd seemed so worthless, so useless, so wrong. The guardian who'd saved everything. I'll never underestimate you again, she promised him. Biscuit didn't respond. His eyes were already on the darkness, watching, waiting, protecting, always protecting. Because that's what guardians do. If Biscuit's journey as the guardian pony touched your heart, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Stories for Horseback for more powerful, real-life horse stories that prove courage has no size. We share inspiring tales every week about overlooked horses and ponies who rise above doubt and surprise the world. Have you ever known a horse that everyone underestimated, but you saw something special in? Tell us your story in the comments. We love hearing from our community. And wherever you're watching from, let us know your country in the comments so we can see how far our Stories for Horseback family reaches. Remember, true value isn't measured by pedigree, price, or appearance. Sometimes the greatest hearts come in the smallest, most unexpected packages.